أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another one of our Mizan live sessions. I hope everyone is doing well. Hopefully your nights of Qadr were hopefully successful and they went well, and hopefully we're able to make some major changes in our lives after going through these special nights. These nights of Qadr, many people go through them, and the only thing that they get out of these nights of Qadr are some good deeds here and there, and maybe some dua here, or maybe some extra mustahab prayers sometimes. But at the very roots of it, the nights of Qadr are supposed to be nights where you make fundamental changes to your life, the type of changes where we might not have the strength to make throughout the rest of the year. That's why the nights of Qadr are there. That's why these days and nights are so special for us. So hopefully we're amongst those who have made those types of advancements in our spiritual journey during these nights. As you know, we were continuing with the Tafsir of Surah Yaseen. We had reached verse 69 actually. We ended at 68, and inshallah today we'll start at 69. So I'm gonna go back a little bit to the verse 64. It's talking about those who will end up in the hellfire, and what happens to them on the day of judgment, what their situation is going to be like. Verse 64 says, "Islawha al-yawma bima kuntum takfurun." Now you enter into the hellfire because of your disbelief. "Al-yawma nakhtimu ala afwahihim wa tukallimuna aydihim wa tashhadu arjuluhum bima kanu yaksibun." On that day, or today, because God is narrating from the day of judgment, we will stamp your mouths, and instead we will have your hands or your arms and your feet speak to us, or your legs speak to us. وَتَشْهَدُ أَرْجُلُهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. We've talked about this before, in the past as well. It's a very well-known fact that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that the hands, the tongue of the human being will be stamped, and that the rest of the body, the other organs of the human being, will speak on behalf of the human being. And then verse 66 says this, وَلَوْ نَشَاءُ لَتَمَسْنَا عَلَى أَعْيُنِهِم. These people who are misguided, they have disbelief, if we wanted to take away their insight, if we wanted to take away their vision, such that they wouldn't be able to do the things that they're doing against religion, we would have been able to do that. But we're giving them a chance to do whatever they want to do. فَأَنَّا يُبْصِرُونَ. If we wanted to take away their vision, where would they be able to see things? How would they be able to navigate their life and carry out their plots, basically? وَلَوْ نَشَاءُ لَمَسَخْنَاهُمْ عَلَى مَكَانَةٍ. If we wanted, we could have taken them and just turned them into animals. And we talked about this, that some of Bani Israel in the past, that's exactly what happened to them. They turned into animals. وَلَوْ نَشَاءُ لَمَسَخْنَاهُمْ عَلَى مَكَانَتِهِمْ فَمَا اسْتَطَاعُوا مُضِيًّا وَلَا يَرْجِعُونَ. If we had done this, you would have never even heard of them anymore. They would have had no effect in this world at all. وَمَنْ نُعَمِّرْهُ نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. And whoever we give longer lives to, the longer the life of a person goes, the more we reduce from his bodily functions, from his physical abilities, the older he gets. نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ means that we reduce him in creation, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, because this person is reaching a point where it's now time for him to leave this world. And as you know, the Quran and Hadith tell us that the older someone gets, the more difficult it becomes to change. And of course, it's even psychologically, we know that. Because it's like that, we give this guy some more signs now. That listen, you're coming to the end of your life. Let us reduce from his creation. Let us take away from his physical abilities, so that slowly he realizes and he remembers that he has to prepare for leaving this world. وَمَن نُعَمِّرْهُ نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Don't they think about this? Okay, so this is where we reached at the end of our last session. Let me pull up the page real quick. Assalamu alaikum to everybody who's with us. So from here we'll move on from verse 69 onwards. وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ. We did not teach this Quran and this prophet of ours ash-shi'r, poetry. وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ. And it is not something that is becoming of him, right? He's not the type of person that would be a sha'ir. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ وَقُرْآنٌ مُبِينٌ. He is nothing, this is nothing except for a remembrance and a clear Quran. Okay, so why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that we didn't teach him poetry? What's wrong with poetry anyways? Well, this is one of those accusations that the people of that time used to use against the Prophet. That you're a poet. This stuff that you're talking about is poetry. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in other verses of the Quran, he actually does have somewhat of an issue with this concept of poetry. The reason for this, and I'll read the verses, is that in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about poetry, it talks about it in a negative connotation, in the sense that poetry is the type of talk that, for the most part, because the Quran does make exceptions, but for the most part, it's the type of talk that's useless, and it's the type of talk that revolves around imagination rather than the type of talk that has to do with the real world. Okay, and the Quran is always against anything. When I say against, I don't mean necessarily haram or anything like that, but the Quran is never a fan of anything that will take your focus off of the real world and will have you focus on fantasies and have you focus on an imaginary world, right? Now, some things that we have in this world do this to a in a very strong way. Some of them do it in a less of a way, right? Like, for example, I might read a non-fiction book. Okay, that's might take me away from the realities of this world, but it's not as strong, for example, as other types of entertainment. And this is fundamentally one of the reasons why music, or certain types of music, is a certain issue, right? Because when it comes to certain types of music, that's exactly what they do. When it comes to certain types of music, they completely remove you from the realities of this world. They make you forget about the realities of this world. And that's why sometimes you'll find people who listen to music, not sometimes, for the most part, people who listen to music, one of their main purposes, one of the main things that they're trying to achieve is to forget about their issues and their problems and their worries and their concerns, which is not necessarily a bad thing. However, the Quran says you have to be careful how you do this. Someone might meditate and they might be able to put away some of their worries. Okay, the Quran, Ahlul Bayt have no problem with that. But then there are certain things that are very strong. They have a very deep effect on the human being, like certain types of music, right? And that's why certain types of music are actually considered problematic in Islam. This is why in the beginning of Surah Luqman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْتَرِي لَهْوَ الْحَدِيثِ. There are those from amongst the people, they sell lahwa al-hadith, the type of hadith that is useless. There's no purpose to it. It's just pure entertainment in the sense that there's nothing positive coming out of it. لِيُضِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And it's the type of entertainment that pushes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. There is punishment for those people. And this verse is actually one of those verses that some of our fuqaha and some of our scholars actually refer to when it comes to discussing whether music is forbidden or it's not forbidden, and what type of a role it plays. Inshallah, later on, if we get a chance, when we move on to the topic of music, we'll have separate sessions for that, to discuss it not just from the perspective of ahkam and the rulings that Ayatollah Sistani and Ayatollah Khamenei have on this issue, but also from the perspective of a little bit more from a perspective of what type of role does it play in our lives, how has it changed over time, what does the music of 50 years ago look like, what does the music of today look like, what are the concepts that are associated with the type of music that we find in today's world, and also what are the ahadith and the verses of the Quran, what do they tell us? And essentially, the one main question I want to answer, and when we get to that session, inshallah, is this: that what is God's problem with music, particularly, like, and the types of music that we consider to be problematic? Is it, for example, the issue that has to do with, forgive me, the sexual content and that type of language that's used in music? Is that the issue? Is it might be something else? Is it the issue of it, maybe getting me to commit certain sins, or is there something else at play, right? And when I say it that way, obviously that means there is something else at play. These are, of course, issues, but then even sometimes, even if these are not there, still you will find that our scholars consider the music to be forbidden. And of course, there are certain types of music that are not a problem whatsoever. So anyways, the reason why we branched off into this is because we were talking about poetry. And poetry, of course, when you talk about music, usually it's accompanied by a certain type of poetry. Now, when the Quran says poetry, it doesn't mean it have to be poetry in a very specific manner. It could be poetry in the sense that it's speech that comes with a certain rhythm with it, right? The Quran says, وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ. This is, of course, in Surah Al-Shu'ara, right? Surah Al-Shu'ara is called Surah Al-Shu'ara because of this verse. And Shu'ara meaning poets. وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ. The Shu'ara, people, the people who follow them are the people who are lost. They're misguided, right? أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ. Don't you see that these shu'ara, when they speak, they just go into any and every issue, right? Meaning that their speech is not speech that's focused, it's trying to teach you something you get from point A to point B from a logical perspective. It's not that. It's just a world of imagination. And if anyone's familiar with, and we all are, fortunately or unfortunately, if we're all familiar with the type of music that you find in today's world and the type of lyrics, this is what you'll find. You see a person who his lyrics are about like the most useful thing, the most useless issues, some of the things that you really sit there and you laugh at. It's the type of lyrics that if you were to take a moment to really think, like, what is this guy saying right now? uh, you would be laughing, really. So this is what the Quran says. Alam tara annahum fi kulli wadin yahimun. They just talk about anything and everything because the whole point is just pure entertainment, right? You're not really trying to get anything out of it. وَأَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ. And they say things that they don't do, meaning that their speech does not carry any weight and any value. And then the Quran, of course, makes this exception. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَذَكَرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. And then there are those, of course, who use this poetry and they are poets, because this illa is a exception from the shu'ara, from the poets. These poets, they, some of them are amongst those who have الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ and وَذَكَرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, and they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a whole lot. Then those people, yeah, I mean, that's fine, right? And we know that even our big scholars, a lot of times, they used to basically endorse or basically encourage a good poetry, right? In the words of one of our scholars, he says that one line of a poem can do the work of 1,000 speeches sometimes, right? So it can be very strong. It just has to be used properly. Now, these guys, the reason why they would call the Prophet a poet was two issues that came together. First of all, they were saying that this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Number two, they were saying that, this Quran, it's so beautiful. The reason why it's so beautiful is that it's poetry. And this is what you also find in the other verses of the Quran, that they used to tell one another that, listen, the only way for you to stop this Quran from getting its point across to people, from attracting to the people, was this: وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَسْمَعُوا لِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَالْغَوْا فِيهِ. Don't sit there and listen to this Quran, وَالْغَوْا فِيهِ. And when it's being recited, make noise and interrupt it. Right? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَغْلِبُونَ. Because if you do that, then you'll have hope that you'll be able to stop this prophet from the work that he's doing. It was so beautiful that they wanted to say, hey, if it's so beautiful and it's so attractive and all that, it's just poetry. It doesn't even make sense. There's no point in it. It's just entertainment. The same way you want to listen to the Quran, you can go listen to these other poets. And of course, at that time, the Arabs had a whole lot of poets and poetry, right? Poetry was a big thing back in the day at that time. And it's interesting that it's mentioned in our books of history. This is not hadith as far as I know, but in our books of history, it's mentioned that Abu Sufyan, Abu Jahl, and Akhnas ibn Shariq or Shurayq, I'm not sure how that part of his name is pronounced, but these were big guys from Quraysh, that during the night when the Prophet was reciting Quran in his house, that they used to come and sit around the house of the Prophet. And you know, back in the day, houses, they weren't as secluded and rooms weren't as isolated as they are today, right? So they would come and sit around the house of the Prophet to hear the Prophet's recitation. The funny thing is that when they were walking away, they bumped into each other, right? And all three of them quickly realized that they and others are there because the Quran is so beautiful. They turned to each other. They said, you know what? We can't do this. I mean, if people find out that the heads of Quraysh are coming and listening to Quran at night, it's going to be a problem. So we have to make sure that we make a pact. We make this like decision and this promise to one another that we are not going to come and sit and listen to the verses of the Quran, right? So they said, okay. They all agreed on it. They left. They came back the next night. Same thing happened. They saw each other the next night as well. And this happened for 3 nights until they were able to stop it, you know, permanently. But the reason why these guys were calling the Quran Sha'ir and the Prophet Sha'ir and Shi'r was because it had this beauty that it was difficult for them to even stay away from listening to. Now, because the Prophet was being accused as Sha'ir and he was being accused as being a poet, you find that the Prophet, whenever, and this is mentioned in our Tafsir as well, in our ahadith, that whenever he wanted to use a poem in his speech, right? He wanted to reference a poem in his speech, on purpose he would change the poem, right? It's very beautiful. That because the Prophet was he was being accused of this, even when he was referencing other poems, right? And this is clear proof that therefore poems are not fundamentally an issue. It's the type of poem that you're listening to, or the type of poem that you're engaging in, or even composing. Anytime he wanted to reference a poem, he would change up the poem to a certain degree. He would move the words from the beginning to the end. Why? Because he's already under the microscope of these people saying that, listen, he's Sha'ir and he's a poet. So if he starts using poetry, he was being extra careful that if I'm going to use poetry in my talk and in my speech and in my conversations, that I change things up. And people still know what saying I'm referring to, but I won't be using the poem exactly, right? It's the same exact approach he took when it came to people telling him that, listen, these things that you talk about, these are things that you have been taught, right? You have gotten these from the Christians or the Jews, or maybe these people that you go and visit, right? They are teaching you all of these things. You find that the Prophet, because he was under that accusation, that وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ, right? He would not وَمَا كُنْتَ تَتْلُو مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ. He would not read any of these books, and he would not write either, right? Even though some say he had that ability, but he wouldn't do it on purpose because he was already under this accusation. Similarly, with this idea of them calling him a poet, anytime he would want to reference a saying, right, or a line of poetry that was common amongst the people, he would do so by changing the phrases in that line of poetry. Okay. So they're telling him, وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ. God is saying, we did not teach him poetry. This is not poetry. وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ. And it's not becoming of him, because Muhammad is wise. He's not the type of person who's just there to entertain himself or others. إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين. This is nothing except for a means of remembrance and a clear Quran, right? Moving on to verse 70. لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا وَيَحِقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. This is a Quran and we sent it. Why? Because we wanted him to warn those who are alive, right? When you read this verse initially, you would assume that what the Quran is saying is that the Quran is there for only those who are alive. Those who are not alive yet, that are yet to come, then the Quran is not for them, right? But literally the Quran is saying no, this is a means of warning for those whose hearts are alive, right? If their heart is dead, إنك لا تسمع الموتى, as the Quran says, ولا تسمع الصم الدعاء. You can't make someone who is not able to hear, you can't make him hear and listen to what you're saying. وَمَا أَنْتَ بِهَادِ الْعُمْيِ عَنْ ضَلَالَتِهِمْ. Ya Rasulullah, as kind and as great as you are, you can't force people to listen to what you're trying to get them to do. You can only tell them, and then if their hearts are still alive, they are high, then they will take that warning. وَيَحِقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. And we sent this so that our command would be established for the kafirin. This is that same command that if you were following us at the very beginning of the surah, we talked about, right? لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى أَكْثَرِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Our decree has been established for them, right? Meaning that it will reach a point, some of these kuffar, there's no point of return for them. There's no way they can come back from what they have done to themselves, right? Now, I will explain this just real quick, small point. It can be important sometimes. This lam, right? Lam in Arabic doesn't always mean I did this because of this. Sometimes in Arabic it means I did this and it leads to this. Okay, now why is this important? Because if you say, oh, the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Quran لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا, to give warning and to have punishment for the kuffar, it seems as though we're saying that God sent his book in order to make this happen. No, lam in Arabic sometimes means we sent this and it leads to, and this is what it means here. We sent this Quran and it leads to you giving warning to those whose hearts are alive, and it leads to the kuffar doing what they're doing, and because of that, punishment being established for them, right? This is very important, because if you look at this lam and you say this lam means I did this because of this or for this purpose, then that means that God sent the Quran for the purpose of misguiding these people, or for the purpose of these people reaching the punishment in the day of judgment, right? And we have other situations, or other instances in the verses of the Quran where this lam is used, but it doesn't mean for the purpose of. Like in the story of Fir'aun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَالْتَقَتَهُ آلُ فِرْعَوْنَ لِيَكُونَ لَهُمْ عَدُوًّا وَحَزَنًا. They picked up Musa لِيَكُونَ لَهُمْ عَدُوًّا حَزَنًا. We would translate this verse, we say they picked up Musa with the purpose of, because they wanted him to be their enemy and a means of sadness and sorrow for them. And that doesn't make sense, because when the troops of Fir'aun were picking up Musa, they didn't pick him up with that purpose in mind, right? They picked it up, and this led to Musa becoming an enemy for them, right? So this is important. In other verses of the Quran, this pops up as well, that this lam, if you don't have a right understanding of it, then sometimes you might assume that the Quran is saying, yeah, we did this on purpose, so that we know that God doesn't create this world so that people will fail the test. You don't build a school so that people will fail. You build a school so that people will graduate, and yes, it will lead to some people also failing, but you don't do it with that purpose. You see, all of this is coming out of this lam and the different types of meanings that this lam has here. All right, let me just check real quick, see if we have any questions. Okay, we don't have any questions. If you guys have questions, you can put them in the comment section. As I'm moving along, I'll go through those as well. All right, moving on to verse 71. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّا خَلَقْنَا لَهُم مِّمَّا عَمِلَتْ أَيْدِينَا أَنْعَامًا فَهُمْ لَهَا مَالِكُونَ. Don't these guys see, these next 2 or 3 verses are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about things that we as human beings take for granted, and we see them as ordinary things, whereas the Quran says no, just because these are things that you are used to in your life doesn't mean they're ordinary, they're extraordinary. In other words, we assume that these things are supposed to be the default, this is how life is supposed to be. But the Quran is saying no, we put our touch on this life that you're living. That's why things are the way they are. What things are the way they are? أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّا خَلَقْنَا لَهُم مِّمَّا عَمِلَتْ أَيْدِينَا. Don't they see that from the works of our hands, from the creation that we did, we created for them أَنْعَامًا فَهُمْ لَهَا مَالِكُونَ, and they own these an'am, these cattle. Okay? وَذَلَّلْنَاهَا لَهُمْ, and we made these cattle humiliated and humble for them. What does that mean? That means that we made them such that you can ride on their back, that you can train them, for example, you can deal with them, you can basically manage them and maintain them, so that out of it comes what? فَمِنْهَا رَكُوبُهُمْ وَمِنْهَا يَأْكُلُونَ. They ride them and they eat from these animals as well. Like we assume, right? Let's give you an example. We assume that a cow should be able, like it should have this ability to be domesticated. But the Quran is saying, listen, that's like something we did. We made them dhalil for you. It's not that this animal was just like that from the very beginning. No, we made this animal dhalil for it. We assume a sheep is supposed to be like the type of animal that you could just hold your hand out and it could eat out of the palm of your hand, right? And it's domesticated, and it's it's something that you can keep, for example, in a garden or a ranch or whatever the case may be, or like in a farm, I should say. But the Quran is saying these are things that we did. These are things that we gave to your life, that these animals are in this way. It was all planned. وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ وَمَشَارِبُ, and out of this comes a whole bunch of benefits, وَمَشَارِبُ, and things that you can drink. And in other verses of the Quran, God talks about how the milk comes into existence, and that's obviously a very beautiful description that the Quran has about that. We don't have time to go over that right now. أَفَلَا يَشْكُرُونَ, they don't thank us for any of these. Instead of thanking us, what did they do? وَاتَّخَذُوا, this is verse 74. وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً لَعَلَّهُمْ يُنصَرُونَ. Instead, what they did is they went and they took other gods, لَعَلَّهُمْ يُنصَرُونَ, so that those other things, those other gods would help them, right, in moments of difficulty. But what they don't understand is this: وَلَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ نَصْرَهُمْ وَهُمْ لَهُمْ جُنْدٌ مُحْضَرُونَ. Beautiful. It says not only will those other gods not be able to help them, in fact, because these guys went and invoked these other things, now for them it might have been idols, for example, right? Because they went and invoked and they adopted these other gods, right? On the day of Qiyamah, hum lahum muhdarun, they will be brought into the punishment because of these idols, right? So the Quran is technically going on the offensive, on offense, basically, I should say. That the Quran is saying not only did these guys not defend their followers, not only did these idols not defend their followers, more than that, on Yawmul Qiyamah, these followers have to pay for their loyalty to these idols, right? They will be muhdarun, they will be summoned into punishment because of these guys. They will be walking behind these idols and they will enter into hellfire because of them. Not only did they not help them, in fact, they will be punished because of them as well. فَلَا يَحْزُنْكَ قَوْلُهُمْ إِنَّا نَعْلَمُ مَا يُسِرُّونَ وَمَا يُعْلِنُونَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. So this should not bother you when they say the things that they say, right? What a big lesson this is, brothers and sisters. To learn not to be upset, not to take it to heart when certain people say things. I mean, the type of stuff that our Prophet used to hear, the nonsense that he used to hear, right? And it bothered him. And the Quran says, فَلَا يَحْزُنْكَ قَوْلُهُمْ. Make sure that what they say, it doesn't bother you, right? إِنَّا نَعْلَمُ مَا يُسِرُّونَ وَمَا يُعْلِنُونَ. And we know from other verses of the Quran that it would hurt the Prophet what they would say. Now, granted, it would hurt the Prophet in a different way than it would hurt us. It hurts us because we take it personally and because we think we're a big deal. It would hurt him because he would see how misguided these people are. But then the Quran says, listen, there's going to come a Yawmul Qiyamah, they're going to be held accountable for the things that they're saying. So it shouldn't bother you. إِنَّا نَعْلَمُ مَا يُسِرُّونَ وَمَا يُعْلِنُونَ. We know everything that they're doing. We know the stuff that they're doing and they're not even showing to anybody. We even know those things. Right? None of it is going to go being unnoticed by us. And then he says this, verse 77, أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ مِن نُطْفَةٍ فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. What a beautiful verse this is. This is one of, I gotta say, is one of my favorite verses. Assalamu alaikum to everyone else who's joined us. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الْإِنسَانُ. Doesn't the human being see? Like, God is saying, like, listen, don't you see the irony in this? Don't you see how ironic this is? What's ironic? أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَّا خَلَقْنَاهُ مِن نُطْفَةٍ. We created this human being from this drop of fluid, right? فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Then all of a sudden this human being is khasimun. He's arguing with us. Like, it's unbelievable. This guy, he was not even there like 20 years ago. Like, we created him from a drop of fluid. فَإِذَا, this is in Arabic, this is إِذَا فُجَائِيَّة, right? It means, like, we would translate it in English as all of a sudden, right? فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. Then all of a sudden he's an open contestant. He's like basically opposing us openly, right? It's just like, for example, if you found someone who was like in a very difficult position in life, right? And then you took them under your wing, right? And you took them under your wing and they started to grow and recover from whatever they had gone through. And then after like 2 years, then that person comes back and he wants to like take over your business now. You're like, wait a minute, this is so ironic. You were the same one that I took under my wings and I helped you out. Now all of a sudden you're coming and you're contesting and opposing the stuff I'm doing, right? It was very ironic for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِذَا هُوَ خَصِيمٌ مُبِينٌ. And then he explains this arguing that this person is doing. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. And now he's speaking to us and he's saying these things and he forgets about his own creation. What is it that he's saying? قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. Who is going to bring back these bones when these bones are like, they're disintegrating and they're falling apart in the human being after it dies, right? And it becomes weak and it becomes hollow and empty, the bones, right? It says, who's going to bring back all these bones, right? Now, this verse of the Quran is beautiful because God, before even mentioning that question that the person is asking, he's already answered the question, if you think about it, right? He said, وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. He is mentioning this example, and they say in the stories, as far as I can remember, that a person came and he took certain bones of the human being and said, here, the bones of this human being, it's dead. What do you mean? If I crack it, it'll just crack open. It's not gonna, there's no life in this. How is that God is gonna bring back life to these bones, right? وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. He forgot his own creation. And then God mentions the question that he had, right? So he answered the question before he even mentioned the question, right? قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. Who's going to bring back these bones after these bones have disintegrated and they're hollow? قَالَ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنْشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. Well, the one who created them in the first place, duh. Like, the one who brought them into existence initially from nothing. You don't think he can do some work and make something happen with at least some dry bones, right? If I brought something into this life out of nothing, then it would be easier for me to do it out of dry bones, right? And it's beautiful because this same argument is used in other verses of the Quran, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he is the one who will redo creation, right? He will do creation over again. He will resurrect the human being. وَهُوَ أَهْوَنُ عَلَيْهِ. And this one is easier for him. And we know that there's no easy or difficult for God. But he's saying, like, listen, even if you think about it from a material perspective, like, it would be easier for him to bring someone, to resurrect someone after that person has like some sort of bones, than it would be for him to create something out of nothing, right? The second one is easier. So you guys see that he did the first one. So why is it that you're doubting his ability to be able to do the second one? I'm gonna move forward because I think we'll end the surah today, inshallah. وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ خَلْقٍ عَلِيمٍ, and he has knowledge of every creation. When he wants to bring back these bodies on the day of judgment, he knows exactly where these bodies are. Now, we do know that there's a discussion, it's a long discussion, about how we are going to show up on the day of judgment. Are we going to show up with bodies? Are we not going to have bodies? What type of bodies are we going to have? How are we going to look? These are all pointers that are discussed in the verses of the Quran, and some of them mostly in hadith. For those, of course, who are interested, you guys can attend Shaykh Amin's course on this. Has to do with barzakh, death and barzakh. And that will be inshallah June 15th and June 16th in Dallas, in case you're listening and you're, either from Dallas or going to be in the area at that time. But there's a whole discussion regarding this idea. Verse 80, moving on to verse 80. الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ الشَّجَرِ الْأَخْضَرِ نَارًا فَإِذَا أَنْتُم مِّنْهُ تُوقِدُونَ. He's the one who created for you fire from the green tree, right? You would assume that this green tree would never be able to change to a point where it could provide fire for the human being. And yet it does that. Yes, this has to happen over time, of course, but still, how is it that this tree, like when we look at a green tree, we just see the green in it. We don't know that there's another source of energy in there, so to speak, right? But this is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the same tree that's green can then become a source of fire for us. فَإِذَا أَنْتُم مِّنْهُ تُوقِدُونَ. All of a sudden this green tree turns into this wood that you use to make your fire with it. أَوَلَيْسَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ بِقَادِرٍ عَلَىٰ أَن يَخْلُقَ مِثْلَهُم بَلَى وَهُوَ الْخَلَّاقُ الْعَلِيمُ. The one who created everything in the heavens and the earth, is he not capable and for him to create another set of human beings just like these guys, in the sense that when it comes to his resurrection of these human beings, he's not able to do it over again? Of course he's able to do it. وَهُوَ الْخَلَّاقُ الْعَلِيمُ, and he's the one who creates constantly. This is one of those things, brothers and sisters, that the human being does not understand. We as human beings think we're like the number one characters in this world, right? And in terms of priority, that might be true, but we don't know. There might be other human beings out there. And then even outside of that, outside of the extraterrestrial terrestrial discussion, even outside of that, we don't even know how many creatures God has created. He's khallaq, right? He creates like this. Now, this creation of his is what he's going to talk about in verse 82 and 83. And these two verses are very important. If you remember, one of the reasons why our scholars said that Surah Yaseen is known as the heart of the Quran, Qalbul Quran, some scholars say it's because of these two verses. Why is that? Okay, take a look at verse 82. Innama amruhu, his command, إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا, when he wants something, when he wills something, I should say, أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ. He says kun, and therefore it exists. He's khallaq. He creates things just like this. It's done. فَسُبْحَانَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Flawless is the one who holds in his hands malakutu kulli shay. There is, brothers and sisters, mulk and there's malakut. Mulk has to do with the material world, the material aspect of our existence. Malakut has to do with the aspect of our existence that lies at a higher level, right? I could say more of a barzakhi, level of our existence, right? And it's difficult to put it into words, really. But this malakut refers to that side of our existence that is not material, basically. That's what it refers to, okay? فَسُبْحَانَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ مَلَكُوتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. The malakut of everything, the very core of the existence of everything, is in his hand. وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And you all will return to him as well. Now, this amr that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, this command, is very important, brothers and sisters, because when you look at other verses of the Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this amr in different ways. Now, we don't have time to go through all of them, but I'll just mention some of the places where this mysterious word of amr of God is mentioned, right? One of them, brothers and sisters, is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that that an imam, in other verses of the Quran, when it comes to imamat, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them, or they guide with his amr. They guide with the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They guide with the kun fayakun of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? It's a discussion we'll have to have sometime, right? That's one place where this word amr, this mysterious concept, I mean, when I say mysterious, in the sense that how does it relate to the issue of imamat? That's one place where it shows up, right? Another place where this concept of amr shows up is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the concept of ruh. Now, you know that in the verses of the Quran, there's this concept called ruh. Left and right, God talks about ruh, right? And when I say ruh, I'm talking about when God says ruh as a separate word. Sometimes it says ruhi, right? وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ ruhi. Sometimes it says ruhana فَأَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهَا ruhana in the story of Maryam, salamullahi alayha. However, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about ruh as a separate word, right? Now, this is a very deep discussion that al-Mizan has, but I'm explaining it in a very simplified manner. In other verses of the Quran, God says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They ask you about the ruh. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Tell them that ruh is from the command of my Lord. And many of us, including myself, when I would come across this verse, I had no idea what this verse was talking about. Like, what on earth does it mean when you ask what is ruh, and God says ruh is from the command of my Lord? Or the Prophet is supposed to tell them ruh is from the command of my Lord. What on earth does that mean? Now, when you connect the dots, then you understand what it means, right? And Allama Tabatabaei has done this in like the most spectacular manner. He says, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Okay, he says, what does amr mean? Well, Bismillah. Surah Yaseen is explaining for us what this word amr means. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَنْ يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ. So, kun fayakun is this amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to his command when he wants to create something, when he wants to bring something into existence. Okay, so قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Tell them that ruh is from the essence of the command of my Lord. Which command? The command of kun fayakun. That means ruh is of the essence of kun fayakun. Okay, so Mufassirin say what the verse is saying is that ruh is a creature that God has created that is in charge of bringing other things into existence by kun fayakun. I know it sounds a little abstract, but you see, when you connect the dots, it actually makes quite a bit of sense, right? He says this ruh is from the essence of that command, meaning that its fabric is from kun fayakun, right? So whenever God wants to create something, who does it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who does he do it through? He does it through this creature called ar-ruh. And now we understand Surah al-Qadr much better, right? تَنَزَّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْرُوحُ. These malaika come and the ruh comes. Well, what are the malaika and ruh coming and going for? What are the malaika coming and going for on that day, right? On that night? Well, they come and go because of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of the destiny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, he's making decrees for what's going to happen in the next year, for example, we read. So the angels are supposed to come and go because they're the ones who carry out different things. They're the ones who make things happen in this world. But also, who's supposed to come and go? Also, ruh is supposed to come and go, because ruh is also the one who is going to create things in the next world. In the next year, I should say. He has to also come and go because he has gonna have a bunch of commands that he has to carry out. All right. So this is why they say Surah Yaseen is known as the heart of the Quran, because the heart of everything has to do with its malakut, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is creating this malakut. وَهُوَ الْخَلَّاقُ الْعَلِيمُ. He has the knowledge to do it, and He is the one who is constantly creating as well. Hopefully that was a good end to our discussion. Of course, the work that Allama Tabatabaei has done, unbelievable. I mean, people have no idea. I'm being very honest. People have no idea what type of scholar he was, and the type of work that he did, and how deep his work is. And it's really not their fault. It's because we haven't been able to take these types of content and make it accessible to our brothers and sisters. And this is why we have these sessions, because I know, brothers and sisters, a lot of times people will say, well, I want to learn about the Quran, but I don't know where to start from. Even if I pick up the translation, I don't know if the translation is the best translation. I don't know, or sometimes the translation isn't even fluent, right? Sometimes you have to go pick up a dictionary while you're trying to translate the verses of the Quran, like through a translation. Like sometimes, I know because I've had this experience, I have to look up certain words in the translation because maybe I'm ignorant, I don't know, but I'm assuming that average person can't even understand some of the translations that we have. And I'm talking about contemporary ones too. So this is why we started these sessions. This is why we're getting into the tafsir of the verses of the Quran. And so please do share this with whoever you think that is, wants to learn about the verses of the Quran. Because what we do here is that we take a whole lot of content and we simplify it, and we make it compact, and it's being delivered here, right? And so it's the type of work that we feel like really needs to be done in our communities, so that no one can sit there and say, well, I didn't know, or I didn't have anything to learn about the verses of the Quran. Bismillah. Surah Yaseen. Another good news that I want to give you guys before we end, inshallah, and I know we have a couple questions, is that our sessions, inshallah, are already being placed on podcasts, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and a couple other services as well. I think maybe Stitcher. So that, because I know that a lot of people have also asked for that if we could have these sessions on podcasts, that they could just listen to it while they're driving, or maybe in your commute, or here and there. I mean, some people I've heard, they just listen to the radio, just like they turn on the radio in the car, and I'm like, really? You just listen to anything that's on the radio? I mean, sometimes they have good stuff, sometimes it's just random stuff. Why not listen to a podcast that can walk you through a surah that you've always wanted to know the meaning of, right? You've always wanted to be able to connect with them. So inshallah, look out for that announcement. We'll definitely have that announced on Mizan Institute's Facebook page about the podcasts, and that's something I'm very excited for as well, to inshallah do that. Take a look at the quick question. So Ruh and Kun Fayakun are creations themselves. Well, Kun Fayakun is not necessarily, I mean, technically it's a creation, but basically the point I was making was that Ruh is a creature that does the Kun Fayakun for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we were trying to say. And no, I mean, if you slept a little bit, the brother is asking, is it bad if you sleep on the night of Qadr? No. The night of Qadr is to make a decision to change your life. If you did that and you slept afterwards, then you still benefited quite a bit from the night of Qadr. And if someone can stay up, then that's even better. Thank you guys very much for being with us throughout this month. Please do send us your feedback. If you want to put feedback as a comment in the comment section, that's fine. If you want to inbox us, inbox Mizan Institute with your feedback, please do let us know if the sessions were what you thought about the sessions, how we can make them better, inshallah, moving forward. And if you have any particular topics that you would like for us to discuss, or any particular surahs that you would like for us to discuss moving forward, because these Mizan live sessions are sessions that hopefully we'll be continuing to have throughout the year in a less compact manner compared to Ramadan, of course, but we'll continue to have them throughout the year. So please do let us know your thoughts and your feedback, and we definitely appreciate it. Thank you very much. Keep us in your du'as, and hope to see you guys soon again, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.